Imagine a socket switching on. The Middle East and Europe are suddenly flipping towards India. Why? Let's flip it open and see. From startup hubs in Sharjah to defense pacts in Cyprus, the world's rebooting its connection with India. And trust me, the sparks aren't just economic, they're geopolitical. So buckle up, because we're about to charge through the high-voltage corridors, economic, strategic, and cultural, that are pulling entire regions toward India like it's the new power station of the 21st century. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I subscribe. And I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. Number 1. Strategic connectivity and trade overdrive. Let's talk about the IMEC. No, not a new K-pop band, but the India-Middle East-Europe corridor. Think of it as the mother of all extension cords, plugging together Asia, the Gulf, and Europe with shiny new rail lines, sprawling ports, clean energy grids, and even digital highways. This isn't just a trade project. It's a geopolitical rebellion against the old-school choke points like the Suez Canal, where ships get stuck and global trade catches a cold. With IMEC, India isn't just participating, it's running the switchboard. Goods that once took weeks to crawl their way through bottlenecks could now zoom across in 30 to 40% less time. That's not just efficiency, that's a total rewiring of the global supply chain with India smack in the center. Now here's where it gets spicy. Europe's Mediterranean trio, Italy, Greece, Spain, are swooning over India like it's the new kid at prom. Why? Because India isn't just about cheap labor or big markets anymore. It's about energy collaborations, green hydrogen ambitions, defense tech, and high-end digital projects. It's Indo-Mediterranean diplomacy with a twist. Europe gets a stable partner, India gets access and leverage, and both sides get to flex independence from older powers that used to dominate their strategic menus. Number 2. Economic and innovation power moves. Now let's shift gears into pure economic adrenaline. First stop, Sharjah, UAE. The city just unveiled the Sharjah India Startup Hub. Translation: the Gulf isn't just pumping oil anymore, it's pumping ideas, and India is the chosen partner to make them profitable. Startups now get Gulf capital, Indian talent, and a launchpad smack in the middle of East and West. Basically, Sharjah just said, India, you're not just our biggest expat community, you're our innovation engine. But the Gulf isn't the only one throwing compliments India's way. Over in Europe, even politicians are breaking into applause. Former Italian PM Matteo Renzi dropped a truth bomb at an ET forum. Global turbulence, wars, inflation, supply chain chaos has actually brought Europe and India closer. Why? Because while everyone else is acting like a volatile stock market, India looks like the safe blue-chip investment in democracy, stability, and growth. That's not me hyping. It's a European leader literally saying, India is the calm in our storm. And the cherry on top. The long-awaited EU-India Free Trade Agreement is finally within sight, expected by the end of 2025. And guess who's cheerleading hardest? Cyprus. This tiny island has suddenly become a transshipment powerhouse, pitching itself as the bridge for India's goods into Europe. Think of it as India's new VIP fast pass into the European club. So in just a couple of years, India went from emerging market to emerging magnet, startups, trade, and innovation all pulling Middle East and Europe into India's orbit. Number 3. Energy and infrastructure. More than oil. If you thought India's energy story was a one-way street of tankers sailing from the Gulf, think again. It's now a multi-lane expressway. Russia, despite being under heavy Western sanctions, is doubling down on energy ties with India. Not only is Moscow pumping oil into Indian refineries at bargain bin discounts, but it's also wooing India into joint projects in the Arctic and the Russian Far East. Translation: India is securing energy from the frozen edges of Siberia to the deserts of the Gulf. Russia knows that while Europe shuts its doors, India is the buyer that keeps the lights on. But let's not kid ourselves. The Gulf is still king of India's energy table. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq remain the top suppliers of crude oil. They're not just energy partners, they're lifelines. And unlike Russia, they come with scale, proximity, and stability. So while India plays the Russia card to hedge bets and save costs, its energy identity remains firmly tied to the Gulf's oil-rich arteries. Number 3. Strategic ripples. Why it matters. Here's the thing. India didn't fly into this summit naive. It knew big power politics is like poker played with nuclear chips. But Alaska drove home some uncomfortable truths. First, no summit glamour points. Just because two world leaders grab coffee in a freezing airbase doesn't mean policies magically shift. Trump may love the drama, Putin may enjoy the optics, but India learned the hard way. Charisma and photo ops don't translate into tariff cuts or sanction waivers. The substance was missing, and India realized that global applause doesn't put cheaper crude in the barrel or open up trade routes. Lesson learned: don't confuse showmanship with statesmanship. Second, autonomy under test. Alaska ripped the band-aid off. India's energy basket is still too dependent on external deals. Its exports are vulnerable to tariff shocks, and its middle path of non-alignment gets shaky when the big players won't compromise. Every global tremor in Washington or Moscow ripples straight into New Delhi's strategy room. The summit highlighted just how exposed India remains to pressures it cannot fully control. Third, talk the talk, but prepare your own path. India can preach dialogue and diplomacy all at once, but without alternatives, it's just wishful talking. Alaska underlined the urgency of building real options: diversified energy suppliers, diversified trade routes, diversified alliances. If the US won't ease tariffs, India needs stronger EU, African, and Asian partnerships. If Russian oil comes under tighter sanctions, India needs fallback energy agreements elsewhere. In short, diplomacy is the song, but self-sufficiency is the dance. And India better learn both. Number 4. India's diplomatic playbook reloaded. So, what does India do with this cold reality check? Rewrite the playbook. Alaska wasn't a win, but it was a masterclass in what not to rely on. Lesson 1. Don't overplay summit diplomacy. Alaska proved that big leader summits are great for headlines but lousy for policy results. India needs stronger institutional frameworks. Think long-term treaties, multi-nation platforms, binding trade deals. You don't build resilience through photo ops. You build it through paperwork, persistence, and patience. Lesson 2. Cultivate bipartisan relationships in the US. If India leans too close to one American administration, say, a Trump White House, what happens when power flips? Suddenly, India's gains turn into bargaining chips. To avoid volatility, New Delhi needs ties with both Democrats and Republicans, ensuring its interests aren't tossed around like a football every election cycle. Lesson 3. Prioritize strategic autonomy. This isn't about defiance, it's about survival. India should only follow UN-mandated sanctions, not Washington-imposed ones, and it must be willing to push back when unilateral pressure threatens its national interest. Alaska reinforced that if you rely on another country's goodwill, you're only as secure as their next policy mood swing. Lesson 4. Diversify the diplomatic playbook. The Alaska chill showed that India can't just keep dancing between the US and Russia. The future lies in multipolar engagement, deepening ties with the Quad, the G20, the SDO, Africa, and the Global South. The wider the net, the less India will drown if one partner cuts the rope. In other words, Alaska didn't hand India a victory, but it handed over a blueprint. Stop depending, start diversifying. At the end of the day, the Alaska summit wasn't India's golden ticket. It was a cold wake-up call. No sanctions relief, no tariff rollback, no magical peace deals. Just a reminder that India can't wait for global powers to solve its problems. The real strategy lies in building resilience, diversifying alliances, and owning its autonomy instead of chasing diplomatic theater. Alaska may have been icy, but it lit a fire under India's foreign policy playbook. With that said, thanks for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And until next time.